Well, welcome to video 2 on the website and YouTube channel Discipleship Squared. Today, what we'd like to do is to start discussing how we look at science and how we study scientific things. And so, I want to share a few things about science that I think a lot of Christians and even non-Christians don't really understand or really appreciate science, how science works. Obviously, we have this debate about origins going on all the time. Many people, probably most scientists in the world today, believe in the theory of evolution as explaining how we got here and how our planet got here and how our universe got here. There are some people who believe that it was created, that there's actual creator that made this happen. And so there's been this debate, and it's been going on for centuries. It isn't just something new, but it obviously is a really important question today. In fact, many people believe that we shouldn't be teaching anything about creation or those ideas in a science class at all. Maybe in a literature class or a biblical class in a Christian school or something, maybe, but certainly not in a public school and certainly not in a public setting. So, what I'd like to do today is to talk a little bit about that issue. There are basically two models or two ideas about how we got here. Either it all happened by chance, and the theory that really describes that most is the evolutionary theory, or we were created and the world was created. There's really not too many other options. I suppose you could say that God used evolution to create, and we'll deal with that on another video. But basically, it's one of these two ideas. Either we got here by chance or we got here because somebody made us. So, how do we study that? Well, one of the things you have to think about when you're talking about science is we have to understand what a scientific fact is. And traditionally, the traditional definition of a scientific fact is it is a fact that is either observable or repeatable or both. In other words, basically, if you say something is scientific, you need to be able to observe it and you need to be able to repeat it. Okay. So, like, we believe that there's this law of gravity. That's a scientific fact. Okay. Well, how do we know that? Well, if I get up on top of my roof here at home and I jump off, uh, you know, gravity will pull me towards the ground. And if I do it 10 times, it's going to happen every time. It's not only observable, but it's repeatable. If I say that oxygen is needed to support fire. If I light a match in the air where there's oxygen, it's going to burst into flame. If I do it in some place that doesn't have oxygen, it won't burst into flame. And I can repeat that in the laboratory. And so a traditional definition is for any type of science thing is observable and repeatable. And so science teachers and science professors all over the world really use this to help explain how science is different than anything else. We do labs in science. Why do we do labs? Well, we do labs in science because we want to observe things or repeat them and make sure they are. If we observe something just once, but we can't repeat it, then that usually means it's not scientific. Okay. That maybe we made a mistake or did something wrong or something like that. Now, obviously, the story of creation, it's not traditional science, okay? Because nobody was there to observe it except maybe the creator. Of course, the Bible says that God created the heavens and the earth, and then eventually he, let people know about that. And it's certainly not repeatable in the lab. You can't go in and into a lab and create the whole universe again or even create life. We even have a problem doing that. So creation is not traditional science. And so it's not observable, it's not repeatable. And so, many science teachers and many people believe that we shouldn't even be talking about this in a traditional science class. But what a lot of people don't think about is that actually evolution is not traditional science either. The idea of evolution, and when I say evolution, I'm talking about where one kind of animal turns into a completely different kind of animal, or bacteria turn into invertebrates or things like that. It takes too long to observe it. Evolution supposedly is the buildup of small mutations over many, many generations until you have a new creation, or a new critter. And that takes too long. It takes millions of years, supposedly, for a monkey to turn into a man, or from a reptile to turn into a bird. So it takes too long to observe it. And because it takes so long, it's not repeatable in the lab either. It's not repeatable. You can't, it takes too long for this to happen. Macroevolution, where you turn from one kind of critter into a completely different type of critter, or when you talk about the evolutionary origins of the universe, where we talk about the origins of stars and how long, they take billions of years to go from a planetary nebula to a burnout star. All those are way, way too long. We can't observe them in a laboratory. It takes too long to observe it. We can't repeat it. So evolution is not a traditional science either. Now, does that mean that we can't talk about this at all in terms of science? Well, no. Scientists use what we call the model evidence approach. And what do I mean by that? Well, the idea here is that we have this idea about origins, and we want to figure out, how did we get here? Well, there are two models that are possible. One is the evolutionary model. We actually got here by chance. And we have another model that says we were created, that someone actually, or some being, or some entity created us, and that's how we got here. Now, we can't prove either one of those because they're a historical fact. You can't really prove history. You can't prove that you brushed your teeth this morning. You can't go back in time and do that, but you can look for evidence. And so what scientists do is they look at the scientific data that is here in the world today, and things that they observe and they repeat in the science laboratory, and they try to figure out, well, which model here does the scientific data support? This is how scientists works. Okay. And so if the data would support evolution, then you would be kind of foolish to believe in creation. And if the data supported creation, you'd be kind of foolish believing in evolution. But it's based on the data. And we can observe that scientifically. We can observe it and we can repeat it. And so that's how we need to study the theory of origins. We need to look at the evidence in the world and find out which model it supports. Now, let's just think a little bit about the two models. If you're a creationist, you believe that God designed all of the stuff that is created, the world and the planet and life and all of its complexity, and he designed it. But if you're an evolutionist, you believe that no, there was no God that did this. This all happened by chance, that life arose from non-living things, and then it evolved over millions or billions of years. If you're a creationist, you believe that it was complex from the beginning. God supposedly made trees, and he made people, and he made animals, and he made the whole planet, and he made all of the stuff. And he basically, it was, he said it happened in 6 literal days. So he had complexity right from the beginning. According to evolution, this didn't happen at all. In terms of life, you had very simple forms of life millions or probably billion years ago, and then those life forms eventually, through the evolution and natural selection, evolved from simple organisms like, say invertebrates and stuff, to way more complex organisms, so like to fish, and then to amphibians, and then to reptiles and birds, and finally mammals. So you should have this order of simple to complex. That's what you would expect in the evidence. But if you have creation, you would expect the evidence to show that life was complex from the very beginning. Also, evolutionists believe that this evolutionary process happens over and there are small types of changes and mutations over millions of years. And so you end up having not one thing turn into a completely different thing. You have small mutations build up over many, many thousands or hundreds of thousands or perhaps even millions of years. And so you'd have all these in-between forms. That's what we call transitional forms. So you'd have a part reptile and a part bird because reptiles turned into birds. You would have maybe a small horse that eventually turned into a large horse. Again, you would have a smaller horse and then a more larger horse and eventually a horse like we have today. You might have part monkeys and part man. And so you would have all of these transitional forms, and there ought to be hundreds of these transitional forms found in the fossil record to show that evolution really did take place. Now, if creation's true and God created everything from the beginning, you wouldn't have any transitional forms. In other words, there shouldn't be in between forms because God created things according to their own kind. And so there shouldn't be these transitional forms. And of course, the Bible also talks about the fact if we take it literally, and Genesis 1 and 2 especially really seem to indicate, if you take it literally, that the earth is very young. That if you look at the genealogies in the Bible and stuff, probably the earth is only anywhere from 10 to 20,000 years old. But according to evolution, that's not true. The Earth is obviously millions or billions of years old. In fact, the universe, most people suggest, evolutionary scientists suggest that it's like between maybe 12 and 15 billion years old. Now, if you look at these two different things, you see that they're almost exactly the opposites. Creationists believe there should be design in nature, but the evolutionists say that the scientific facts should show that chance can answer all of our questions, that life could happen just by chance. Creationists say it could be complex from the beginning, but evolutionists is just exactly the opposite. It goes from simple to complex. Creationists say there shouldn't be any transitional forms. Evolutionists say there should be many, many, many transitional forms. And of course, creationists say, well, it's a young Earth or a young universe. And evolutionists say, oh, no, no, it's the opposite of that. Notice these two things are almost exactly opposite of each other. And what that means is we should be able to look at evidence on our planet today, and we should be able to observe things and repeat things in the laboratory. And one of these should get validated. Okay. It should be very easy to figure out if things are designed or if things could just happen by chance. We should be able to find if there's lots of transitional forms or no transitional forms. And so that's the way that we're going to approach this particular um, website and these particular videos that we're going to produce. We're going to look at the evidence, different types of scientific evidences from both the evolutionary and the creationist standpoint, and we're going to look at this evidence to see which column it goes into and which theory, the creation theory or the evolutionary theory, has more actual empirical evidence to support it. So that's how we're gonna work our videos, and I hope that you'll find them to be helpful to you in answering questions about origins. And let me remind you to at the end of this video, uh, click on the little hand to the thumbs up to like the video so we know that you're reading it and seeing it. And also, if you haven't subscribed already to this channel, please subscribe. That way you'll get all the videos as we produce them. Have a good day.